Before this story begins, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this remind us that sometimes life gives people a second chance when they least expect it. And trust me, the ending of tonight's story is something you'll feel long after the video ends. Now imagine this. You're sitting alone in your kitchen on a rainy night. You think your life has already become predictable. You think the best moments are behind you. You believe love is something that belongs to younger people, happier people, luckier people, and then your phone lights up. One message, just a few words. Mom, I need to tell you something tonight. Please don't be surprised. That message changed everything. Because what happened next didn't just change Emily Carter's evening. It changed the entire direction of her life, and by the end of this story, you might start believing that it's never too late for happiness. Emily Carter noticed the message the second her phone vibrated against the kitchen counter. The sound was small, barely noticeable, but in a quiet house, even the smallest sound could feel enormous. Outside her Portland home, rain drifted steadily through the dark evening sky. Water tapped gently against the windows while distant thunder rolled somewhere beyond the neighborhood hills. The weather had the same calm sadness that many of her evenings carried now. Nothing unusual had happened that day. She had finished her shift at the bookstore around 6, stopped by the grocery store afterward, bought tea, soup, bread, the same things she always bought. Then she returned home to the same quiet routine she had followed for years. Dinner alone, washing dishes alone, late-night television she barely watched, and eventually sleep. Predictable, safe, lonely. Emily dried her hands with a towel and glanced toward the glowing screen. The message was from Liam. Immediately, her heartbeat changed. Her son rarely texted late at night unless something mattered. For a brief second, fear slipped quietly into her chest. She picked up the phone quickly. Mom, I need to tell you something tonight. Please don't be surprised. Emily stared at the message. Once, twice, 3 times. The words felt heavier each time. She read them. Please don't be surprised. That sentence could mean almost anything. Her mind instantly began racing through possibilities. Was he hurt? Was he in trouble? Had something happened at work? Was he moving away? She typed back immediately. Liam, are you okay? The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared. Nothing. Emily waited another few seconds. Still nothing. The silence somehow made everything worse. She placed the phone down slowly and walked across the kitchen, trying to calm herself. But anxiety had already entered the room. Ever since losing her husband, Michael, years earlier, Liam had become the center of her world, not intentionally. It simply happened that way. Grief has a strange way of shrinking life. At first, it takes away one person. Then slowly, without warning, it begins taking away pieces of you too. Emily stopped making plans, stopped traveling, stopped saying yes to invitations, stopped imagining a future beyond responsibility. Her focus became survival. Work, bills, parenting, routine, and through all of it, Liam stayed close to her. They leaned on each other through the worst years. When Michael died unexpectedly from a heart condition, Liam had still been young enough to need guidance, but old enough to understand pain. Emily remembered the night she told him, the way he stood frozen in the hallway, the way he tried not to cry because he thought he needed to be strong for her. That memory never fully left her. Even now, years later, certain nights still carried echoes of that grief, especially rainy nights. She walked toward the window and wrapped both hands around a warm mug of tea. Outside, streetlights reflected against wet pavement like scattered gold. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, yet Emily felt restless. Her mind drifted toward thoughts she usually avoided. What if Liam moved away someday? The idea hurt more than she wanted to admit. Of course he deserved his own life, his own future, but after years of building her life around motherhood, she wasn't sure who she would become once he no longer needed her. That realization frightened her. She took another sip of tea, and somehow, without meaning to, her thoughts drifted toward Daniel Harper, the man from the bookstore. Even thinking his name made her straighten slightly. Daniel had started visiting the bookstore about 6 months earlier. At first, Emily barely noticed him. He seemed like every other customer, quiet, polite, interested in literature. But unlike most people, Daniel stayed. He asked questions. Not simple questions, real ones. Questions about stories, about meaning, about why certain books survived generations while others disappeared. Emily found herself enjoying their conversations more than she expected. He listened carefully, never interrupted, never rushed, and in a world where everyone seemed distracted all the time, that kind of attention felt rare. Sometimes he would arrive near closing time and spend 20 minutes discussing poetry. Other times they debated endings of classic novels. One afternoon, after laughing together over a terrible modern romance novel someone had donated, Daniel smiled and casually asked if she'd like to get coffee after work. Emily remembered the exact feeling that rushed through her at that moment: surprise, fear, and something dangerously close to hope. But hope terrified her. So she politely declined. She told him she was busy, too much work, too many responsibilities. Daniel smiled kindly and accepted the answer without pressure. But Emily still remembered the disappointment hidden quietly behind his eyes, and for days afterward, she kept wondering what might have happened if she had simply said yes. Her phone suddenly rang. Emily nearly dropped the mug. "Liam," she answered instantly. "Mom?" His voice sounded nervous, but excited too. That confused her even more. "Can I come over?" he asked. "Right now?" Emily frowned. "Of course. Is everything all right?" There was a short pause. Then Liam laughed softly. "Yeah, everything's okay. I need to tell you something in person." Emily agreed immediately. But the second the call ended, her anxiety returned stronger than before. She walked into the living room and instinctively started cleaning, straightening pillows, adjusting blankets, turning on softer lamps. It was something she always did when nervous. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too still. 20 minutes later, headlights appeared through the rain-covered window. Liam had arrived. Emily hurried toward the door. Before she could even fully open it, Liam stepped inside, shaking rainwater from his jacket. But something about him looked different tonight. Lighter. Not stressed. Not upset. Excited, almost like someone trying very hard not to ruin a surprise. Emily studied his face carefully. "You're scaring me," she admitted. Liam laughed and wrapped his arms around her. The hug lasted longer than usual, and strangely, that hug alone reassured her. "You're not in trouble, right?" she asked with a nervous smile. "No," he said quickly. "I promise." They sat down in the living room. But Liam couldn't stay still. He kept pacing, running a hand through his hair, starting sentences and stopping halfway. Emily watched quietly. Finally, Liam stopped walking. He looked directly at her, and suddenly, his expression became serious. "Mom," he said softly. Emily's chest tightened again. "You spent so many years taking care of me after Dad died that I don't think you ever stopped long enough to take care of yourself." The words hit her harder than expected. She opened her mouth to respond, but Liam continued. "You work constantly. You come home exhausted. You never go anywhere. You never do anything for yourself anymore." Emily tried smiling. "I'm fine, Liam." But he gently shook his head. "No. You survive. That's different." The room fell silent. Emily looked down at her tea, because deep inside, she knew he was right. She had become so focused on stability that she forgot what joy felt like, and hearing her son say it out loud made the loneliness she had hidden for years suddenly feel visible. Then came a knock at the door. Emily looked up immediately, confused. "It's late," she said. "I'm not expecting anyone." But Liam smiled, not a nervous smile, a knowing one. And suddenly Emily realized, whatever this conversation was about, it wasn't over yet. Not even close. Liam walked toward the entrance calmly, too calmly. If he already knew exactly who stood outside, Emily's confusion deepened. Liam? She asked cautiously, but he simply opened the door, and there he was, Daniel Harper, standing beneath the porch, light with rain droplets still clinging to his dark coat. In his hands was a bouquet of white lilies. For a moment, Emily genuinely believed she might be imagining the entire thing. Daniel looked just as nervous as she felt, yet his smile remained warm, gentle, careful. "Hi, Emily," he said quietly. She stared at him, then at Liam, then back at Daniel again. Her brain struggled to connect the situation. "You two know each other?" Liam laughed softly. "Actually, yeah." Emily blinked in disbelief, and slowly, the strange mystery of the evening began unfolding. Months earlier, Liam had attended a local volunteer event helping organize donated books for children's literacy programs. Daniel had been there. During casual conversation, Daniel mentioned frequently visiting a bookstore downtown. Eventually, he described the woman who worked there: smart, kind, funny. Liam immediately realized he was talking about Emily. At first, he found it amusing, but over time, curiosity turned into friendship. The two men continued seeing each other during volunteer events. Sometimes they grabbed coffee afterward. Sometimes they talked for hours. And eventually Daniel admitted something honestly. He liked Emily. Not casually, not temporarily, genuinely. But he also respected her enough not to force anything, especially knowing how much she had been through. Liam looked at his mother with a small smile. "You deserve to be happy too, Mom." Those words nearly broke her heart, because nobody had said something like that to her in years. People admired her strength, relied on her responsibility, appreciated her sacrifices, but nobody ever stopped to ask whether she herself was happy. Daniel stepped inside slowly, not confidently, not arrogantly. Carefully. As though he understood this moment mattered deeply. "I didn't want to make things uncomfortable for you," he explained. "I asked Liam if he thought this would be okay." Emily still looked stunned. "I can't believe this," she whispered. Daniel handed her the lilies. "They reminded me of you." She accepted them carefully. The flowers smelled fresh and delicate, simple, elegant. Emily noticed her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, from emotion, because after years of believing romance belonged to another chapter of her life, someone was standing in her living room offering her kindness with absolutely no expectations attached, and somehow that felt more overwhelming than grand gestures ever could. Liam watched the scene proudly. The tension slowly softened, then he suddenly clapped his hands once. "Okay," he announced. "I think we survived the awkward part." All three of them laughed, and for the first time in years, Emily realized laughter no longer sounded unfamiliar inside her house. The warmth in the room changed something. The silence that once felt heavy now felt peaceful, alive. Emily looked toward Daniel again. Rain still tapped lightly against the windows behind him, yet somehow the entire house felt brighter. Not because anything physically changed, but because hope had entered the room, and hope changes spaces, even quiet ones. Just when Emily finally began relaxing, Daniel exchanged a glance with Liam, a suspicious glance. Emily narrowed her eyes immediately. "What was that?" she asked. Liam grinned. Daniel looked nervous again. "There's actually one more thing," he admitted. Emily laughed softly. "Another surprise?" "Oh, definitely," Liam said. Emily crossed her arms. Now, curiosity had completely replaced fear. Daniel reached into his coat pocket slowly and pulled out a white envelope. Her eyes followed the movement. The envelope looked important, carefully folded, protected from the rain. He handed it to her. Emily opened it slowly. Inside were 2 tickets. At first, she didn't fully process what she was reading. Then suddenly her breath caught. "A storytelling festival," she whispered. "Vancouver." Emily looked up in disbelief. Months earlier, during one of their bookstore conversations, she had casually mentioned always wanting to attend the festivals someday. It wasn't even a serious conversation, just a passing comment. A tiny dream spoken out loud for less than 30 seconds. Yet Daniel remembered. Not only remembered, he listened, and that realization affected her more deeply than she expected, because for years Emily had been the one remembering things about everyone else: birthdays, favorite meals, appointments, important dates. She spent so much of her life caring for others that she forgot what it felt like when someone paid attention to her, real attention, the kind that notices small dreams. Daniel spoke gently. I thought maybe, if you wanted, we could go together. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic tears, quiet ones, the kind that arrive when your heart suddenly realizes it has been lonely for far too long. Liam smiled from across the room. She's crying, he teased. I am not. Emily replied immediately, then laughed while wiping her eyes. You absolutely are, Liam said. The room filled with warmth again. Daniel explained that the festival focused on stories about resilience, second chances, grief, healing, and hope. Writers from different countries would speak there. Independent bookstores would host events. There would be poetry readings near the harbor, late-night conversations in crowded cafes. As he described it, Emily could almost picture herself there, walking unfamiliar streets, exploring new bookstores, drinking coffee while rain touched city windows. The image felt distant and exciting at the same time, like a future she once believed no longer belonged to her. Liam suddenly grabbed his keys from the counter. I should probably leave now, he announced. Emily looked up immediately. You're leaving? He smiled. Yes, because I think happiness needs room sometimes. Before she could argue, he hugged her tightly, then quietly whispered something into her ear. You deserve this. Emily closed her eyes for a second, because hearing those words from her son meant everything. After Liam left, silence returned to the house, but not the old silence. This one felt softer, warmer. Emily and Daniel sat across from each other for a moment. Neither knew what to say. Then Daniel laughed nervously. I've been terrified all day. Emily smiled. Really? Oh, absolutely. I thought there was at least a 50% chance you'd slam the door in my face. She laughed again, and Daniel noticed something important. Her laugh sounded younger. When she forgot to hold it back, the conversation slowly deepened. Emily admitted she had wanted to say yes to coffee months ago, but fear stopped her. Not fear of Daniel, fear of starting over, fear of disappointment, fear of vulnerability, fear of losing happiness after finally finding it again. Daniel listened carefully, then said something she would remember for years. Moving forward doesn't erase the people we loved before. It just means we'll allow life to keep happening. Emily looked at him quietly, because somehow, that single sentence eased years of guilt she had carried. Silently, part of her always believed opening her heart again would somehow betray Michael's memory. But maybe love wasn't something limited to one chapter. Maybe grief and hope could exist together. Maybe memories didn't disappear simply because life continued. That realization changed something inside her, and for the first time in years, the future no longer frightened her. It intrigued her. As the evening continued, the conversation became easier, natural, not forced. Daniel told stories about his childhood, about growing up with parents who constantly moved from city to city, about learning to love bookstores because books felt like the only permanent thing in his life. Emily listened closely. She noticed how thoughtfully he spoke. Daniel wasn't someone trying to impress people. He simply valued honesty, and honesty felt refreshing. Eventually, the conversation shifted toward Michael. Emily expected the atmosphere to become uncomfortable, but surprisingly, it didn't. Daniel never acted threatened by the past. Instead, he listened with genuine respect, Emily found herself talking about memories she hadn't shared in years. Michael dancing terribly in the kitchen. Michael burning pancakes every Sunday morning. Michael insisting road trips were better without maps. As she spoke, Daniel smiled quietly, not jealous, not impatient, understanding. And that mattered deeply, because Emily realized something important. The right person doesn't ask you to erase your past, they make space for it outside. The rain finally stopped completely. Clouds drifted apart slowly, revealing scattered stars above the city. Emily glanced toward the window. The world looked calmer somehow, and strangely, so did she. Hours passed without either of them noticing. At one point, Emily suddenly laughed. "What?" Daniel asked. "I just realized I haven't looked at the clock once tonight." That surprised her. Normally evenings felt endless. She usually counted time without meaning to, but tonight moved differently, because meaningful connection changes the way time feels. Daniel eventually asked why she stopped doing things she loved. Emily hesitated, then answered honestly, "Because surviving became easier than hoping." The sentence lingered between them. Daniel nodded slowly. "I think a lot of people do that after loss," he admitted. Emily looked down at the Vancouver tickets. Again, a small smile appeared. "I used to dream about traveling," she said quietly. "So what happened?" She thought for a moment. "Life happened." Daniel leaned back, thoughtfully. "Maybe life is happening again now." That sentence stayed with her. Maybe life wasn't over, maybe she had simply paused it. And maybe tonight was the beginning of pressing play again, even with hope growing inside her. Emily still felt afraid, because second chances sound beautiful in stories, but in real life, they're terrifying. Starting over means risking heartbreak all over again. It means admitting you still want happiness. And after years of disappointment, many people stop allowing themselves to want anything at all. Emily had spent years convincing herself she was content, but contentment and happiness are not the same thing. Contentment says, "I can survive this." Happiness says, "I want more from life." And wanting more always involves risk. Daniel seemed to understand that without needing explanations. At one point, he looked directly at her and said softly, "There's no pressure here, Emily. If you want to go to Vancouver as friends, that's okay. If you need time, that's okay too." That reassurance mattered more than grand romantic promises ever could, because genuine care gives people room to breathe. It doesn't demand. It allows. Emily realized she trusted him more with every passing minute. Not because he said perfect things, but because he never tried forcing the evening into something artificial. Everything felt patient, real. And after years of loneliness, real connection felt almost unbelievable. Eventually, Daniel stood near the doorway preparing to leave. The night had grown late, but neither of them seemed eager for it to end. Before stepping outside, he paused. "I'm really glad I came tonight," he admitted. Emily smiled softly. "So am I." He looked relieved hearing that. Then he added one final thing. "Whatever happens next, we move at your pace." Emily nodded, and for reasons she couldn't fully explain, those words made her feel safe. Not rushed, not pressured. Safe. Daniel stepped outside into the cool night air. Streetlights reflected against the wet pavement. The city smelled fresh after rain. Emily stood in the doorway watching him walk toward his car. Halfway there, he turned back briefly, smiled, then disappeared into the night. Emily closed the door slowly, and suddenly the house no longer felt empty. Emily leaned against the door holding the lilies carefully. The room looked exactly the same furniture, same lamps, same walls. Yet everything felt different. It amazed her how quickly hope could transform a place. She walked toward the window and watched Daniel's car disappear down the street. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Liam. "How did it go?" Emily smiled instantly. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Finally she typed, You were right. Thank you. She pressed send, then stood quietly in the middle of the living room. For years she believed the hardest part of grief was losing someone, but tonight she realized something else. The harder part was learning how to live afterward, not survive, live, and somewhere between rainstorms, lilies, and unexpected courage, she had finally taken the first step toward doing exactly that. She placed the Vancouver tickets carefully on the coffee table, then walked into the kitchen to make another cup of tea. But this time the routine felt different, because tonight she wasn't thinking about loneliness. She wasn't thinking about fear. She wasn't thinking about endings. For the first time in years, Emily Carter was thinking about the future, about bookstores, about travel, about possibility, about Vancouver. Sometimes life doesn't knock loudly before changing. Sometimes it arrives quietly. In a text message, in a conversation, in a bouquet of flowers, or in the simple moment someone reminds you that your life is not over yet. Emily spent years believing her happiest days belonged to the past, but one unexpected evening taught her something powerful. The heart doesn't stop needing connection just because it has been broken before. And maybe, just maybe, the people who deserve happiness the most are often the ones who stopped expecting it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that second chances still exist. And remember this: it's never too late to begin again.